Hello, ladies and gents, it's Hagbard here on this beautiful Monday afternoon, and I have before me a video with Kevin Logan. That's right, Mr. Potato Head himself. Though he appears to have grown some mold in his time in the root cellar. In this video, he is accusing anti-feminism of being a religious belief. Ironically, not but 2 or 3 weeks after all of us started proclaiming that feminism was behaving like a religion. I think you need to become a little bit more subtle in your attempts at argumentative judo, because you see, simply actually saying, no, I'm not, but you are, doesn't function above, let's say, third or fourth grade. Kevin, I know you only operate on a fourth or fifth grade level. However, the rest of us are trying to actually have a conversation, and I'm going to interrupt yours with some facts that I know neither one of the people in this video enjoy, though I hope my audience will. With that, let's begin.
One of the things that we talked about before the show was the parallels between religious fundamentalism and this sort of anti-feminist ideology in terms of the tactics they use and the way that they present things.
Yeah, it's the anti-feminists that use classic puritanical shaming tactics that are akin to extreme religious belief. Sure, it's us.
And do you want to expand a little bit, talk a bit more about what you were saying about the parallels between these two movements?
Yeah, they are. They've become almost as if anti-feminism has become its own religion.
Funny, Kevin. Did you pick this argument up by watching us call you religious fundamentalists? Is this you trying to just flip this around?
And I understand it to a certain extent, because when I went through the transition, as a child, I was a hardcore Bible-believing Catholic.
Well, here's his admission that everything he's going to say is utter projection, because a large majority of us atheists that are vocal against you are indeed non-religious and never were. So you projecting your need for a higher power onto us is rather insulting, Kevin. As it were, it appears as though you have literally lifted the arguments that we have made against your people and just turned it around and said, no, that's what they're doing. No, Kevin, you needed to feel like part of a bigger group. You needed to feel a larger sense of purpose. That's why you're doing what you're doing.
To being an atheist, a devout one, dare I say.
You see, Kevin, not one normal thinking atheist would dare refer to themselves as devout atheists, because that implies that you are devoted to something. Atheism is not a devotation, Kevin.
I've tried to find different things to replace it, because when you're socialized within that framework of that, you need a cause or a kind of some bigger thing than yourself. And so I look for it in things like politics, music, things like that, trying to be a part of like a movement or whatever.
And you found feminism, Kevin. I am not sure how you're saying these things and not realizing that you're making our argument against you for us.
And so I understand the need for that kind of that bigger cause, or that the need to belong to a certain sort of in group, whatever.
Yes, you do quite clearly understand that that's a need you have, Kevin. But not all of us are like that.
But what they've done is they've set up their own kind of quasi-religion within irreligiosity.
Yes, Kevin, this is indeed what we have accused Atheism Plus and several of the other social justice movements of doing. Thank you for again making our point.
Whereby they've got there's the same framework of you've got sort of saints, dare I say, like Christopher Hitchens or whoever. They don't have to be dead necessarily.
Anita Sarkeesian, Emma Watson, fucking bewildered ape. Hell, I've heard some feminists say Beyonce.
They've got the kind of religious leaders will stoke fires underneath, and regardless of any of the really, really shoddy tactics they'll use, as we discussed earlier with Thunderfoot and his cherry picking of information.
You are describing every internet feminist in the world right now, Kevin. You're describing the people that work for Huffington Post. You're describing the people that work for Salon Magazine and Gawker. That's what you're describing right now, Kevin.
And also, actually, another great one I didn't occur to me earlier. He's one of his favourite fallacies is the lie by omission.
Yeah, and I'm sure that you're going to have a really good feminism-based example for this, aren't you, old Kev?
Where I don't know if you've seen the clip he uses of an atheist conference, which kicks off with they're discussing gender, and they're saying, "Oh, I'm a heterosexual man, and my pronouns are he, him," and all that, and they go down the line of the people on the table, and he says, "This is what atheism has come to." No, that was one talk at one conference, which was specifically about gender. Why would you expect them to not start like that?
Well, dear Potato Head, let me explain it to you in the most simple terms humanly possible. Atheism and conferences about atheism should be about science, technology, and the absence of belief in deital control. What I believe Mr. Thunderfoot was saying was that the gender studies bullshit had no reason to be at the conference at all, and that if it were to be at the conference, it should be scientifically based and not based on checking one's privilege and Tumblrisms.
And the fact that you didn't tell your audience that suggests to me that you're behaving like a fucking evangelist would.
Kevin, oh dear sweet Kevin, let me explain something to you. We are offended that it is at a conference about atheism in the first place. The context is irrelevant.
And that's what these people do. They'll stoke up the crowd, often for their own either financial ends or a feeling of power or prestige or
Like a Benny Hinn.
Exactly, yeah, absolutely, and they are utterly shameless in doing so. They've got no problem.
It is utterly amazing that you can sit on camera and say these things with no sense of self-reflection, with no understanding that feminists do the exact same thing, if not worse, and with much, much larger platforms. Kevin?
Whether it be, and part of it's anti-feminism, but it does bleed into all sorts of bigotries, racism, homophobia, Islamophobia, transphobia has become something of a thing as well.
Once again, Kevin just paints his entire enemy basis as racist, bigoted, misogynistic, Islamophobic, transphobic, homophobic, etc., etc., etc. Frankly, I'm just surprised he didn't just say right-wingers. I mean, that's pretty much the label they like to use for people like me.
So you get all of that kind of hideousness. You get I jokingly refer to Thunderfoot as the Thunder Christ and his followers as the fundamentalists, because they do act as fundamentalists for him, and he does almost act as a kind of quasi-religious figure within his own little realm. That essentially he behaves as if he isn't infallible. His sort of followers, treat him as if he isn't infallible, and that automatically he says something, therefore it must be correct, and he is to be defended regardless.
Citation needed, Kevin. You can't just lambast an entire group of people like that. You must understand that that's bordering on libel, right? Oh wait, you don't care. You were part of the campaign that attempted to get him arrested in his own country for being a fucking Holocaust denier. And he's the one that has no respect for facts, eh?
Even I had people with this thing about the Crown Prosecution Service changing their guidelines to try and get more rape cases to court, to try and improve the incredibly pathetic statistics regarding convictions for rape in Britain.
Wow, incredibly pathetic is an amazing way to describe the application of fair law, Kevin.
Although that's a problem across the world, they're trying to take a step there, which didn't affect the legal rights of any human being in Britain whatsoever. It's just the guidelines for prosecution. Note the word prosecution, not not the law. The law hadn't changed in the slightest.
Kevin, you're clearly not very familiar with how legal systems work in the West, especially under English-style law. Yeah, that is indeed how law is applied. The wording of the law need not change if the procedural techniques change, Kevin.
But he somehow managed to twist that by, again, the same way that you would expect an evangelical, fucking fundamentalist, mad Christian or Muslim to do.
Or Anita Sarkeesian about video games. Or MTV about cultural appropriation and costumes during Halloween.
Or any fucking religion to do. You're guilty until proven innocent of rape, which isn't the case. That was never the case. It's not even close to being the fucking case. And yet when this was pointed out to him, again, he refused to accept that this was the case.
No, he refused to accept your straw man of his position. What he had said was that it opens the door to make it easier to falsely accuse someone of rape, which is true. And regardless, the fact that the quote-unquote perpetrator or suspect of a rape's name is published in the newspaper and the accuser is not, and then even if the false accuser is found to be falsely accusing, she's only fucking viable for perjury, which is an extremely minor offense.
And just obfuscated and went to his fail-safe mechanism of calling someone a feminazi.
Misogynist!
Or so, another thing he does, this really childish thing of burn, or you've been pwned. Oh, come on, like, just if you're prepared to have a discussion, and also for full disclosure, I'll say those words too, but at least I do it in a kind of tongue-in-cheek way.
Yeah, because there's absolutely no way in fucking hell that a professional research scientist is using those words sarcastically, now is it, Kevin?
Like, I'm not trying to be cowabunga, dude. Look, you're a man that's pushing fucking 50 or something, mate. Just have a bit of decorum when discussing stuff. When you, a doctor, is discussing something else with another doctor, you don't say burn at the end of it, even on Twitter. Just, anyway.
Well, Kevin, you clearly know fuck all about scientists, because they do indeed laugh and joke amongst themselves when discussing their research. As a matter of fact, physicists and chemists have some of the most fun at parties. Of course, you'd probably not know that, as not one person of that caliber would deign to pass an evening with you.
But that was an aside. But yeah, they've set up that kind of religious mindset as well. But again, we were discussing this before we came on. It's almost worse in a way than previously when they had God as the kind of divine thing, because even though it's all in your head anyway, or not that there's no God, but the talking to God. Or
Kevin, did you just say that as a fucking atheist? Did you just correct yourself and be unwilling to say there's no God?
Or not that there's no God, but the talking to God. Or
Why, yes, you fucking did, and you wonder why we want nothing to do with people like you in atheist circles. For fuck's sake, man, you are so backwards.
Yeah. If we go by Popper, then what distinguishes science from pseudoscience is that scientific statements have a possibility of being shown to be wrong by the evidence.
Feminism is good for women and men. Evaluate that statement and see if it can be disproved. Also try it with, the wage gap exists due to sexist discrimination, and only women can be raped.
And pseudoscience can't, because it's either confirmation bias or cherry-picking data. It is basically, you'll never say you're wrong, because you'll always be able to explain away whatever you observe. Well, that's what pseudoscience is. That's like astrology.
Yes, that is what feminism and most other social sciences are, indeed.
yeah, that's what I meant about having like a loop out of the thing. You can, like any fundamentalist, you argue them into a corner, and when they've got nowhere left to go, they'll say, God did it, or something. Whereas they'll just go, you're a feminazi.
Is this why you're afraid to go into public debates with actual intellectuals and prefer to actually have debates with the trolls online, Kevin?
It's basically the same fail-safe mechanism, allowing them the get out. It's a little trapdoor they can use at any moment to get rid of any problem.
Yeah.
No, Kevin, this is what the social justice warriors do with terms like misogynist, racist, bigot, homophobe, all the things you started this with.
And often they'll just ignore it. They won't even fucking reply. They will literally just ignore the truth. You point the truth out to them, and they'll just ignore it. And then later pretend that you didn't point it out to them. Again, a very fundamentalist approach.
First and foremost, Kevin, no one is required to answer your commentary. Secondarily, on your second point, I would require something of a citation there. You can't simply claim that people ignore the truth and then go on to proclaim that it was never pointed out to them, especially when that truth is as biased as what you're pushing as truth, which is why we call you religious fundamentalists, Kevin. We welcome and relish dissent. You remove dissent from your groups by social force. And you know that.
But, and the other thing that I had to get over was that German is a really complicated language. I make mistakes all the time.
Oh God, here we go with a false equivalency. Because, you know, language has a proper usage. It is already in stone. Gender studies is a constantly shifting ideological position that favors one gender over the other and tends to attempt to seek out oppression where perhaps there is none. But please, go on with your false equivalence.
And I was always humiliated when I made mistakes because nobody likes to make mistakes. But Germans, actually, a lot of my German friends gave me a really good role model. They want to be corrected. They'll say to me, help correct my English, help me get better. And so making a mistake is not seen as being humiliating for them. They see it, if they make one, they want to know so that they can do it better in the future. And that's the approach we should have when we're presented with new data that makes us re-examine our worldview.
So that's your really prettied up way to say listen and believe, because this isn't linguistics, lady. This is ideological principles. And disagreeing with someone's ideological principles is indeed not the equivalent to being wrong.
For instance, the idea that there are big sex differences in the brain that lead to, that can account for the way that we have organized our societies by gender norms is wrong. And we talked about that, I think, the last time, that there is not that much difference. Well, okay, that's new data. The answer isn't to deny the data. It's to go, I need to rethink all of the things that led me from this assumption into other assumptions, and then see what the new consequences are.
See, I was so curious about this, I actually went out of my way to find the original scientific paper that they're talking about here, and it doesn't say anything like that. As a matter of fact, it says 66% of the human population actually falls quite squarely within the biological, biochemical brain makeup that would be determined by sex, which leaves about 34% of individuals on a varying sliding scale from one to the other. However, they still tended to predominantly show male or female characteristics within the structures and functions of the brain. Did you even read that study? Because your conclusions drawn from it are purely ideologically driven and not driven by the data. Perhaps don't get all of your gender-based research from Zurich.
That's called learning. That's called learning.
Yeah. Well, that's what annoys me when they say, you're only a feminist because you're not prepared, you're too dogmatic, you're not prepared to learn, or you're not prepared to take in different points of view. No. You've got that arse backwards. I'm a feminist because I was prepared to look at the world. I was prepared to try and take in new information. I wasn't born a fucking feminist. I wasn't raised a feminist. I became one because it reflected what I saw of the world when I was prepared, when I eschewed Catholicism and looked at the world afresh.
Again, Kevin, you fall squarely within Sargon's law. You were a shitty sexist human being that now opened their eyes to feminism. Most of us who were raised egalitarian see this new wave of feminism for what it is, purely destructive ideology. And frankly, I have a lot less respect for you because you bought Catholicism full fucking cow. So what's to say you're not soft-headed enough to be further brainwashed, Kevin? Because that's what appears to have happened. As a matter of fact, that's what you just described.
with genuinely open eyes, and I saw deep fucking problems. Now, it's not perfect, and I'm constantly reassessing my situation, but basically, it's the best fit.
Yeah, 'cause otherwise, how would you get all these nice ladies to talk to you?
It seems to answer a lot of the things that I see as wrong. Now, if you can prove that that's not correct, I'm prepared to change again, because I'm not actually in a fucking religion.
Funny you should say that, because you accused Thunderfoot of ignoring tons of evidence that's been pointed out to him, and yet you've ignored all the evidence that's been pointed out to you. And here you sit claiming you're willing to shift your position, once again trying to be the counter Sargon somehow, and failing fucking miserably.
And that's the nice thing they say. Oh, feminism's a religion. No, it isn't. We don't have a god. We don't have saints. We don't have dogmas. And not just that, because they'll say the ideology of feminism, the ideology.
Yes, Kevin, it's like saying Christianity. It's generic, but it does indeed describe a religious group. Does it indeed describe all of the subsets of that religious group? No, of course not, Kevin. That would be fucking stupid. But of course that's the argument you're going to make here, is for all the different branches of feminism. And because there are multiple branches of one ideology, that ideology is not an ideology, am I right? And you don't have gods? Well, congratulations, because neither do anti-feminist atheists. What the fuck's your point? You don't have saints. That's laughable. I listed those earlier when you mentioned saints before. You're saying you don't have dogmas? What the fuck is patriarchy? What the fuck is women worst, if not a dogma, Kevin? Don't be so intellectually disingenuous. I know it's impossible for you, but please, at least try.
Like there's one set of rules. No. There are people called, TERFs, the trans exclusionary people. I despise them as much as I despise the anti-feminists, frankly, because they're essentially two sides of the bigoted coin.
You're right. The TERFs are two sides of a bigoted coin. They hate both men and transsexuals. But it's funny that you're calling out the heretics.
I don't see them as massively different. They're bigots. They think themselves, because they were born a certain way, they're inherently better than other people, or because they belong to a certain group, they're better than other people. So for me, then I don't see them as massively different, even though they're feminists as well. I don't. This isn't a fucking. This isn't a church.
As much as you say that, you still haven't said one thing that doesn't sound like something I would hear from a religious leader, Kevin. Essentially, what you're doing is being a cult leader while claiming this is not a cult, which is what cult leaders do.
We're not following the same rules. We're not all the fucking same, okay?
Kevin, your logic is infallible. Everyone knows that Baptists aren't Christians, right? Because they have a separate label.
So shut up, basically.
And there's the level of intellectualism we have come to expect from the potato-headed idiot.
Well, it's just sort of, turn that mirror, look at the critiques you're making, and then look at the movement that you're part of, and ask of the people that you listen to, are they actually applying the scientific standards to their own, to their own statements when they make a conclusion about the social world? Is it backed up by evidence? Can you access that information so you can examine it for yourself? I think we're kind of coming back to the same ground, but it's only because I think we both care about it so much. We're saying it again, like, please, please, please.
I agree. Our entire movement has been standing at the walls of the gate screaming, please, please look at the fucking evidence. But here you are, continuing to say, I have all the evidence. I don't need any more information. Any more information could potentially damage my shit. I don't want anything else involved in this. What I'm saying is absolutely and positively correct. That's your position. We rag each other all the time over here. You guys rag each other and kick each other out of the movement. You see the difference?
Raise your standard.
It's a point I've made before. I wouldn't be doing videos if it weren't for the incredibly shitty state that. And again, it's because it's atheism. I would expect it of people who had not had their eyes opened, as it were, and purposefully or via indoctrination had their eyes closed to so much of the world because of religion.
Oh, look, more projection from Kevin with with a little bit of delusions of grandeur about having had his eyes open to the truth and thinking that somehow makes him a better person to not believe in a sky daddy. Congrats, Kevin. You're still at level 1. Step up your game, boy.
So to have kept hold of so much of that patriarchal bullshit.
Oh, I thought you didn't have any dogmas, Kevin. What patriarchal bullshit are you talking about? Just men having an opinion that occasionally doesn't agree with women?
Even though they've come out of religion. Well, for some of them, obviously, they never were part of religion. But I think most atheists were at one point sort of religious or spiritual or whatever.
Just because there's way more religious people than atheists.
Well, exactly, yeah. And certainly from my experience of talking to atheists, that seems the case. There are very few that were raised as purely secular or whatever.
Oh, well, I guess having been raised purely secular makes me intellectually superior to you by your own definitions, Kevin, as I didn't have to have my eyes open. I was born with them open.
They all come from some sort of religious tradition. But they've kept hold of so much of that patriarchal bullshit, and it's deeply annoying to me because it doesn't make any fucking sense in my head that you would, if you've worked out its bollocks, why have you kept hold of so much of it?
Yes, because disagreeing with the actions of feminists can only come from an ex-religious standpoint. As a matter of fact, it's only a hangover of these religions. There's no way someone could, as an outside observer, come to these conclusions on their own. Not a chance. Any outside observer would just know without a shadow of a doubt that feminism was the best thing in the world for everybody.
Just because you've gotten rid of the God bit, that's not the end of it. You know what I mean? It's the system of control, and it's that doesn't even just bleed into gender. That can be any number of different things. There's all sorts of hierarchy and royalty and all kinds of privilege. Yeah.
Kevin, not everyone lives in the UK. Not everyone deals with royalty. That's just your little island, guy.
And indeed, the protection given to pedophiles within the Catholic Church and all sorts of really hideous shit. Why have you kept hold of some of that?
Again, you are inferring from your personal experience the ideas of others. This is called projection, Kevin.
Why not get rid of all of it and start afresh, in essence? That seems like the natural thing to do.
Sounds like a plan, Kevin. Would you be down to assist reversing a little bit of the gynocentrism in our culture, or no? You wouldn't even see it that way.
And yet it can be difficult. I understand that perfectly well. I went through a difficult time in my transition, but you sort of have to. Otherwise, you're still religious. You're just irreligiously religious, if that makes any fucking sense whatsoever.
And again, Kevin signals his moral superiority to us all as he has moved past all of such mortal things. And yes, Kevin, you are religiously irreligious. You're what we coined that shit for.
Yes.
You've replaced Jesus with anti-feminism. Is what you've done there. You've replaced one deleterious addiction with another, basically.
Yeah, that's it, guys. That's all he said. Basically attempting to I am rubber, you are glue the entire argument we've been throwing at him. He's claiming now that anti-feminism is religious, when in fact what we do is search through all the data and come to other conclusions. Interesting that he should project so greatly on one video and he would find a dodo bird to use as his sounding board. I really hope everyone enjoyed. This is sadly going to count as the palate cleanser this week because it's going to be a full week. This will likely be the only Kevin video I make, so he can't decry harassment and potentially get some more Patreon dollars. I find him laughable most of the time. I think most of the people in the community do. No one takes him particularly seriously, and frankly, I don't think you guys should either. Don't go hammer this guy's fucking YouTube. Don't go hammer this guy's Twitter. It's not worth it. All he's going to do is use it to build his victim complex. Anyway, I'll see you guys on Wednesday.